This is Danny Gould with the Gould team, selling Silicon Valley. Welcome everyone to another Silicon Valley market snapshot for the last week here in October of 2019. We are headed into now the holiday months, right? And so it's super important to look at this data because last year, at this time, we were experiencing some really wonky things in the market, and as a result, that snowballed into what was a very frightening first quarter of 2019, and here we are sitting in Q4 of 2019. And if you're a home seller, you gotta be feeling pretty good about yourself, and I'm gonna show you why in a second. But if you're a home buyer, now is not the time to panic, and now is not the time to overanalyze. Now is the time to act. So let's look at the data, let's look at the numbers for this week, folks. First of all, the Santa Clara County statistics. One thing that I wanted to point out to all of you is that when we look at the numbers here in 2019 in the single family sector, if you notice a trend, since the beginning of September here, we've pretty much been going down, and of course there's some ebbs and flows, but if you notice the trajectory is down. Now, when we look at the beginning of September here of 2018 to where we were right now at this time last year, where there was a big increase, not a big increase, but about a 15 to 20% increase or so in active inventory in the single family sector. We have gone down that same amount practically here in the last 2 months. And so this right here is a trend, right? And these trends seem to implicate that the single family sector, at least here in Silicon Valley, has tapered off. It is coming down slightly in terms of inventory, which if you're a home seller in the single family sector should be music to your ears. Let's look at the condo and townhomes though, because now, as you recall, at the beginning of 2019, we had almost triple the amount of inventory when we looked, when compared to 2018. Now, pardon the glare here, whoops. Now in 2019, 598 condos and townhomes active. There were 597, equal amounts now. So we've come to an equilibrium. If you've been watching these videos for any period of time now, you'll know that at least for the last couple weeks, I've been talking about this stasis. I've been talking about this equilibrium in the condo and the townhome sector, and it's finally come true. I mean, it has been, the trends have been there and things have been coming down on the inventory side of things, but not to the point where we're literally at 0% year over year in the condo and townhome sector. So overall here in Santa Clara County, we are down fairly significantly year over year in terms of active inventory. But the good news is that if you're a home seller, is that the pendings are up. And that's another thing to keep in mind. And it's not like, it's not an extraordinary amount more. I mean, look here, 880, 396. When we compare this to last year, I mean, we're only up maybe a total of what, 60 units, 70 units overall when we compare to last year. But it's still a positive. And so when we look at this data and we look at the graphs, and we look at the heat maps, which we're about to, it's important to keep in mind that over the last 2 months, we've had this trend where inventory is coming down, it's leveling off, it's leveling off. Well, it's leveled off now, and now it's kind of going down a little bit. And so you have to ask yourself, in the winter months, which is traditionally, until last year, a time where we have fairly less amount of inventory as opposed to most other times a year, how does this play out over the next 2 to 3 months? And then, subsequently, what does that mean going into like Q2, Q3, Q4 of 2020? Let's pay attention to the first like 45, 60 days here, heading into the holiday season. Here's my prediction. I predict that this trend that we see here is going to continue to play out. Notice that when we look at 2017 and we look at 2018, we had only 610 units on the market. That's like, we have double right now. So look, here we have 2017, and this is what happened, right? 2017, we had this low inventory, fed into the winter months, and then by 2018, it was a very sparse amount of inventory in the single family and condo and townhome sector. We're pretty much double. And then when we have this benchmark here, 2016, we're pretty much neck and neck in the single family sector, condo, townhome, a little bit up, a little bit of an increase there. But here's the bottom line, is that over the next 60 days, should this trend continue, my prediction is that when we go into the meat and potatoes of the spring quarter next year, the spring market next year, the inventory levels are going to be far lower than we're used to seeing during the springtime. In fact, I would say that it's not going to be anywhere near 2018 levels, but I would suspect that they're going to be somewhere along the lines of what we saw maybe in 2017, 2016. Definitely not as high as we saw last year. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think a lot of homeowners right now are holding, are hedging their bets. They're holding onto their properties because of this, decline that we've had over the last 6 to 12 months. And so that, coupled with the buyer demand, I expect housing to be very strong heading into Q1 should these trends continue. And a trend is a trend. You see it. It's been going on for 2 months now, and I expect it to keep going. I don't see any sort of unless some sort of extraneous unknown force comes in, like stock market collapses, I suspect that this will continue to be the case over the next 3 to 6 months minimum, and could potentially play itself out even more, just depending on how things play out here. But let's pay attention to this, because it's very important if you're a home seller in, say, spring of next year. It may be more beneficial for you to sell sooner rather than later. And I'll explain why. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. I might not even show you the heat maps today. Who knows? But when I think about selling a home, and I think about when the optimal time to do it, sellers really pay attention to what does everyone else say, right? Which everyone says, spring is the best time to put your home on the market. And why does everyone say that? Because there are tons of buyers out there, and that's very true. But guess what? There are also a lot of homes on the market. With the volatility that we've experienced, there is no reason to discount the probability of a lot of people deciding to put their homes on the market next spring, especially if the next 3 to 4 months are good for home sellers here in the Valley. They'll see, oh, there's a resurgence, time to sell my home before the market really takes a dip. And then we kind of get into this vicious cycle again, where there's too much inventory on the market for the buyers to consume and to absorb. And so we might get into this vicious cycle, right, where reactionary cycle. So if you're a home seller, why don't you jump the gun? Why don't you take a little initiative in your life and sell when everyone else is still getting over their holiday coma? That's my personal favorite thing to do. Come on the market January, say 15th. And by the time Super Bowl rolls around, you're in escrow. Why? Because no one else has their home on the market the first 2 weeks of January. And, well, that's pretty much it. Coupled with the fact that after the first, a lot of sellers might not be in like selling modality, because it takes a lot of effort to get your home ready and everything. And I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying that that's not true. But what I'm saying is that if you can get over that, food coma and holiday coma and get your home on the market, be proactive, the reward is that buyers are out there in droves after the first of the year. They're in that new year, new me mentality, and all they want to do is buy a house. And so what happens is that there's roughly like a 3 to 4 week period where there is very good activity and very little inventory. And so couple that with what we're seeing here right now, I highly suspect inventory levels to be very low during the first 4 weeks of 2020. But the buyer activity is going to be exceptionally high, higher than we're used to seeing at that time of year for many reasons. The biggest one being that a lot of buyers think right now that Silicon Valley is on sale. Did you know that? And because they don't watch these updates. But that in and of itself is motivation, right? It gives them initiative. It gives them a reason to get out of the house, get out of that food coma, and go take a look at houses. So it's a great time to be putting your home on the market because you got a lot of buyers out there, PS, who are also thinking, well, are interest rates going to go up now? Is the Fed going to artificially slow the market down again? Probably not, because there's talk of the Fed bringing rates down even more. But there's a lot of reasons, there's a lot of good reasons for buyers to be coming on right now and being very proactive with their home search. And so if you're a home seller and you're on the fence, the advice is simple, and feel free to not take it. I really, it doesn't affect me either way. However, if you want to capitalize on good trends, on good market conditions, the best thing to do is keep the home off during the holidays, aggressively coming soon campaign during the holiday season, our holiday marketing campaign, Selling Silicon Valley marketing campaign. We do it for all our sellers during the holiday months. Keep it off the market, actively market it to the top 10% of agents plus Intero real estate agents. You capitalize, get over 5,000 real estate agents to know about the house before it comes on. So by the time we do come on the MLS, we have like, 6 showings or so lined up, boom, 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 and in a week, it's gone. Just saying, could work for you. But that is definitely predicated on the idea that these trends are going to continue to play themselves out over the next 90 days, which I highly suspect is going to be the case. Could be wrong, but I'm probably not. All right, let's briefly look at the heat maps because I have an appointment to get to. All right, active listings. So everybody, again, this should not be surprising to you if you just saw the other charts. Most areas in the red, some places to keep an eye on. You got Evergreen right here, which we know is kind of like a secondary market. When Evergreen is hurting, most of these areas are hot, and vice versa. Interestingly enough, though, some of these areas are not hot right now. So I don't really, I don't know how to explain this. And this is even worse. If you're an Evergreen, maybe pump the brakes for a few weeks. Everywhere else though seems to be a-okay. Sunnyvale, we have a little bit of a dip, and Milpitas as well. So keep your eye on those. Cupertino, it fluctuates as you see. Over the last couple weeks, we've seen Cupertino kind of like ebb and flow. Sunnyvale, let's pay attention to this too, because remember what we said, right? Everything that happens in the Mid-Peninsula eventually trickles down over here, and so these areas might be the beginning of a buyer demand issue as opposed to a active inventory issue. Could be, but something tells me that this is all going to work itself out here in the next couple of weeks. Moving on to the Mid-Peninsula, again, last week I talked about Palo Alto and how the inventory levels there have increased year over year significantly, and frankly, pendings are not keeping up with that increased inventory. And so despite the fact that there might be more demand in the area and more houses may be absorbed, it's not enough to compensate for the increase in inventory, or the overall increase in inventory, and that could eventually trickle down to us. That could eventually trickle down to the central region of Santa Clara County and into the South County as well. But just looking at the numbers here real quick, you have a plus 32% in Palo Alto, and plus 16 in Los Altos, plus 87. Again, Los Altos Hills is one of those areas where there might be 2 listings or 3 listings this week instead of 2 from last week. So there's very little data here, so the numbers are always very drastic. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtains. Negative 17% here in Mountain View. Now, couple that with the increase in pending sales here, Mountain View is doing just fine. The only place that I start to kind of like question is Palo Alto. Los Altos, you still have quite a bit of absorption going on here that far outweighs the nominal increase in inventory. So this is active listings, that's pendings. So for right now, if you're living in the Mid-Peninsula, the only area where I would be like a little weary is listing your home in Palo Alto. I would be cognizant of what's going on right now, but also keep in mind that this is area specific, but it's not specific to your community. Palo Alto has a lot of condominiums, and so it could very well be that that if you're selling a single family home in an area like Professorville, right, like you're going to be fine. But if you're trying to sell one of 4 condos available in your 20 unit building, you might want to rethink that. Moving on to South County, we have Morgan Hill and Gilroy. Again, Gilroy about a month ago was doing very well. Now active inventory seems to be creeping up in Gilroy and in Morgan Hill. And again, right, that's a reactionary thing. I think a lot of sellers that were on the fence saw that things were going well in the area, and then boom, a huge surge in inventory. And I would not be surprised. In fact, I would expect this to continue to be the case really for a while, because this equilibrium, this stasis that we've reached, feeds into reactionary behavior, because on any given week, people are going to see different things and then react to it, right? And so right now, there's a surge in inventory. There's also, a little bit of a decrease in demand, at least in Gilroy. In Morgan Hill, you're holding strong. But in Gilroy especially, a little bit of a decrease in demand and increase in inventory. Again, in my opinion, that is reactionary behavior that stems from what was going on 30, 45 days ago or so. So things to keep in mind, folks, if you live in these areas, is that these heat maps, they do paint a broad picture, but they don't paint a specific picture. So if you have any questions specific to your needs, don't hesitate to reach out. My phone, email is always on for you. And I get questions every single week. And thank you for all your questions, and thank you for reaching out to me. A, it's good to know that people watch, and B, I enjoy having that conversation with you and going back and forth and making sure that your questions don't go unanswered, because ultimately that's what I'm here to do, is help you understand exactly what the market's doing and bring you the most up-to-date and relevant information. This is Danny Gould, everyone, with the Gould team selling Silicon Valley, and I will catch all of you in the next Silicon Valley Snapshot.